Hello, we're on the air with Captain Ray Lewis. Captain Lewis, how are you doing?
Wonderful, Chris. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too, sir. Um, can you tell us about your career in law enforcement? How did you decide to go into police work?
Well, I got into law enforcement at a rather late age. I was 29 years old, and I was the old head in the police academy class, and that is because I had a number of jobs prior. I actually had 21 different jobs prior to that, many of them just lasting for short periods. The shortest period job I had was half a day working with a cement contractor, just taking a wheelbarrow of cement from the truck to the site, dumping it, coming back, getting it, another, load up, going to the site, dumping it back and forth. At lunchtime, I said, that's it. I'm not continuing this job. And another job was working as a drill press operator, where you had a large container of pipes on your left side in a cart. You picked it up, you put it under the drill, you pulled the drill press down, you put the hole in it, then you put it into an empty cart on your right-hand side. You did this all day long. A machine could have done that. So I realized early on that I had to get satisfaction out of my work, and I could not work an entire week just for the money on Friday. That was not enough reward for me. I had to get satisfaction out of the actual job. And then I realized, you know what, working with people, helping people, that would give me satisfaction. I went to college. I got a degree in psychology. I worked with a child care agency working with juvenile delinquents. But after working with them for quite a while, I did not see any effect I had on them from when I first started working for them. Very frustrating. I then got a job working with schizophrenics at a private mental institution in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. It was actually a living situation where each patient had their own assistant therapist. It was a very prestigious institute where only the very rich sent their children or relatives there because they had their own therapist. And I worked there under the guidance of a Dr. John Rosen. And after working with my patient, I saw no difference between when I started. Again, not rewarding. One night I was coming out of a bar in Philadelphia, and I saw two thugs pulling an individual out of a Chinese store and unmercifully pounding him. I started to run over, ready to help, and I thought, wait a minute, these two guys can just as easily turn on me, and I'm not into 2 against 1. So I squat down behind a car, and in my most loud and authoritative voice, I shouted, "Police!" And they got up, turned, looked their heads. They didn't see any police, but they heard that voice and they ran. I then ran over to assist the individual. But then I realized, if I was the real police, I could have actually gone over there and arrested those guys and made them pay for their crime and take them out of society for a certain extent of time if necessary. So that put the bug in my mind about police work. And I thought, you know what, that's varied. There's nothing boring about it. And you're helping people. And if I don't like it, I can always quit. It's not like you're signing up to the military for 2 or 4 years. And that's what started me on my police career. And I never regretted that decision for 1 minute.
Did you start out with rank with your college background in the police as you would in the military, or did you have to work your way up from...
Work my way up. In fact, my college degree actually hurt me. After you graduate from the academy sends the police district you go to your personnel file with all your personal information. Part of that included my education. And I never forget the second day I was there, a lieutenant walked up to me, and he was a little shorter than I, and he looked up at me and he said, "So, you're a college boy, huh? Well, we'll see how long you last." And the other cops, they all had this attitude towards college people as thinking they were somewhat superior. They thought we were superior to them because they didn't have a college education. They resented that. I obviously never showed that. I never wanted anybody to know that I had a college education because I knew they had that attitude of a sense of inferiority.
And how long did you work with the Philadelphia Police Department?
24 years. So I lasted pretty long, despite what that lieutenant said.
It sounds like you won the respect of your peers while you were there. What stands out in your mind from your career with the Philadelphia Police Department as a story that you can share with the audience?
Wow, there are a lot of stories, and a lot of them have nothing to do with stopping a robbery, stopping a rape, arresting a murderer. They have to do with making just people in the community feel so much safer. People in the community feeling, hey, this man responded to us. We did not get lip service from this cop, as they were so used to doing. And that gave me just as much satisfaction as the more publicized type of arrest was treating people with respect, listening to them, and reacting to their concerns. So I would say it ran the gamut, and there's no one single incident that I could point to and say that was it.
A lot of people have misconceptions about police officers because of the fact that I guess bad news is reported more than good news. So when a policeman does something such as use excessive force, it immediately gets reported everywhere. Whereas if a policeman helps a citizen during their daily routine, that goes almost unnoticed. Why do you think that, or how do you think we can fix the problem of the, I guess, the bad cops and the public perception of police?
Well, to touch on your statement about we only highlight the bad things that cops do, that's not necessarily true. And sure, cops do a lot of good things every day, but I don't want to be reading about that. Just like I don't want to be reading about a surgeon who does successful heart operations every day. But I do want to know when he cuts off the wrong leg of a person. Same with a cop. When he unmercifully beats somebody unnecessarily, I want to know about that cop, that incident. The other thing about reporting good stories about cops are after a while on the job, you put up a wall, and that wall is really hard to get through. And cops don't want to deal with the public. And that wall is so thick that it actually infiltrates to the police department's public relations bureau. These are people that are supposed to be getting the good stories out. But they are so conditioned that it's us against them that even the public relations bureau has a problem with dealing with the public.
You were also involved in a movement that gained a lot of press, but didn't really get the press that it deserved or the right kind of press. And that movement was called Occupy Wall Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what inspired you to be an activist?
Well, basically, three things. I was retired for 10 years and living up in the mountains here with my wife. My wife and I actually moved the very next day after my retirement. She took a month off from her job prior to do all the packing and whatnot. So we were up here for 10 years. Up here for 10 years, one of the things I was able to do was a little more reading. I had nothing to do with reading the mainstream press, papers or magazines. I got all of my news from a computer. My wife brought her work computer up here, and that's where I got my news. I never watched television for news either. And I started to read information from news sources like Crooks and Liars, Glenn Greenwald, Daily Coast, Fire Dog Lake, Truth Out, all these places of information I was never aware of. And they brought a lot of things to light. And so I really started to grow that way. Then there are three exact things that happened that made me get involved. Number one, I was reading about Occupy, and it really caught my eye. Wait a minute, what are all these people doing down there, living under these harsh conditions? What's the purpose of this? And the mainstream media, which these blogs were reporting on, saying that mainstream media was just classifying them as lazy, loud, screaming troublemakers. And I said, no. People do not live in the cold like that. They do not sleep on hard concrete and marble at night. They do not eat pizza for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They do not use McDonald's restrooms for their personal needs. There's a reason these people are doing that. And there wasn't much further investigation. Oh, the other thing the mainstream media was saying was that they have no demands. They're not asking for anything. So I found on the web an article called The Declaration of the Occupation. This had 23 bullet points of demands, things they were asking for. After I read each of those bullet points, I said, wow, I agree with that one. Oh, yeah. The second one, absolutely, I agree with. Third one, sure, who wouldn't agree with that? After I get the end of those 23, there was not one I disagreed with. Not only did I agree with them, I wholeheartedly agreed with them, and each and every one of them had to do with corporate corruption. The problems in this country and abroad that corporations in this country are causing. Not only did this impress me, but what also impressed me was that it was put out on September 29th. Occupy started September 17th. That was 12 short days after the occupation started. With all that turmoil, with all that organization having to take place, they still managed to get out this occupation. And this flew directly in the path of the mainstream media saying they had no demands or they were asking for nothing. So that was one thing. I totally agreed with everything they said. I then watched a documentary called Inside Job, 2008, directed by Charles Ferguson, narrated by Matt Damon, and it has to do with the financial meltdown in 2008. Inside Job has nothing to do with the towers falling. And after I got done watching that film, Inside Job, I got up and I said to my wife, why doesn't somebody do something? I very frustratingly then walked out of that room and I passed a mirror. And then I saw somebody. I realized I had to get involved. And I couldn't just be saying, why doesn't someone else get involved? I was that somebody, and everybody else is that somebody. Okay, so I had those two factors. But then I thought, okay, I go down there, but can I be a little more significant, a little more effective? And I thought, aha, I have the uniform. And with that realization, that set it off, and I started to make plans.
And when you first arrived in New York City, what was your impression of what you found?
My first impression was well, first of all, I got down there on the 14th. Late in the day, I thought, before I get dressed and go down to Zuccotti Park and all, I am just going to rest here, get up early tomorrow morning, and that's what I did.
And was that June 14th? Or
no, November 14th.
November. Okay, I'm sorry. The movement started earlier, but yes.
Yes, it did. I got down a little later. I was heavily involved in a local election that happened November 5th, and I could not leave that from all the work I put in. So anyway, that night, Zuccotti Park was raided. The next morning I come down, nobody there. But I saw all these cops surrounding the whole park and steel barriers and whatnot. And that was my first impression. Look at this outpouring of police in here for what? I just thought it was a way overkill. And that was on purpose. It was on purpose. They wanted to make a statement that in no way, shape, or form was this going to rebuild the Occupy in there. So that was my first impression.
And when they raided Zuccotti Park, there was a library that had a number of books and publications that was one of the first things they dismantled. Did they do that under orders?
Oh, yes, they did. In fact, they came under orders that filtered down from actually the mayor. Now, the mayor didn't exactly say, destroy the library. But what he's responsible, Bloomberg, because he gave the police commissioner in New York City, Ray Kelly, the authorization to carry out his plan. Ray Kelly and many other departments were involved in this. And They presented this plan to Mayor Bloomberg, and more or less carte blanche, do what you want, get them out of there. There was never any setup. Let's see what we do with these medical supplies. Let's see what we do with these books. Let's see what we do with these people's personal property. What they did was they loaded them in just a dumpster or a trash truck, whatever, and they crunched them all up. And they took them to a lot across the city, and they emptied these trash trucks with all this crushed up personal belongings. And then they told the people, yeah, you can come and get your belongings. They're at this such and such location. And everything was, well, you can imagine a trash truck when it empties the trash. Well, everything's totally destroyed. It's compacted so much. And I consider what they did to be a form, now catch this, technically, of armed robbery. And here's what I mean by that. The law states if I go into your house and you're not there, it's burglary. I steal something. If I go in, if I grab you and take the wallet out of your pocket, that's robbery. If I grab you and take your wallet out of your pocket, and I have a firearm that you see, then that's armed robbery. And these officers went in, they had very noticeable firearms, and they stole people's property. Armed robbery by law.
Why was the city of New York's government so resistive to the Occupy movement compared to other movements that have come and went?
It wasn't necessarily the city of New York. It did not originate with them. It originated with the corporations in Occupy Wall on Wall Street. The corporations were behind the whole thing. The corporations were behind the dismantling of 17 Occupy sites across the entire country that happened within 3 days. You do not dismantle 17 Occupy sites just coincidentally. These cities decided to do it on this day. That was orchestrated by Homeland Security, who had pressure on them by corporate America.
And these are the same entities, these corporations, that also lobby Congress and sit on committees and make laws with our elected officials.
Chris, they don't lobby Congress. They own Congress.
And they also own the press too, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't there less than 10?
They own every important aspect of this country that has to do with control. They own.
I recall one night during Occupy, there was an incident where there was a march that spanned the Brooklyn Bridge, and this is when they projected onto one of the buildings to occupy city after city, etc. And I believe the New York Police Department estimated the numbers to be between 25 and 30,000. If I recall correctly, the only media outlet that reported that kind of turnout was, I believe, MSNBC. Fox put it around 6,000. I mean, they severely undercut it. How is it that the media can so easily shape the view of the people watching it without people getting up and fact-checking, without seeking out alternative outlets, without doing a little bit of self-investigation? What do you think keeps people so complacent and tuned in to what's delivered to them at their convenience?
Yeah. Well, number one, they hear from so many different outlets. I mean, you not only hear from Fox, they hear from ABC, CBS, NBC, and subsequently when they in the radio show. I mean, all the radio programs in this country, the main ones, are owned by 4 major companies, and they have a monopoly on all this news. So they hear from so many different sources. They do hear from a lot of different sources, and that's what cements their minds to the information they're receiving from all these different outlets. I mean, you go to a doctor's office, and I don't understand why they have Fox News on these little televisions up in the corner. And I politely ask the person in charge of the office, Do you realize that your TV isn't tuned into Fox? Do you realize the hatred they spew and the misinformation they give out? And oftentimes I met with blank stares. Or oftentimes I'm met with, well, we see nothing wrong with it. And oftentimes sometimes I'm met with, okay, we'll change that. So wherever you go, I mean, you have people sitting in doctors' offices and they're hearing Sean Hannity and Jim O'Reilly. They're not hearing the MSNBC people, Rachel Maddow, up with Chris Hayes.
Do you believe that the misconception that Occupy is made up of people that have a lot of class envy, that are Marxist or, just hippies is propagating?
People of Occupy had no class envy whatsoever, but they do believe in class. Well, and I hate to say they do. I'm not speaking for. I do not speak for the Occupy movement like that. But from what I experienced and what I feel is that whenever you have two or more classes of people, there should always be class warfare. These people realized there were at least two different classes of people, and they weren't going to settle for that. They weren't going to tolerate that, and they were not envious whatsoever. You didn't have people here wanting to be those sociopathic multimillionaires on Wall Street. Never ran into that whatsoever. They had empathy for the people who were the victims of the different classes in society.
One of the focal points or one of the goals of Occupy Wall Street was to separate the moneyed influence of corporations from the actual policy-making process of our government. Why would people object to that?
Why would people object to money being poured into political campaigns from corporations? Okay, because once these politicians accept money, which they almost all do, they are owned by corporations. They become a literal puppet of the corporation. They become whores of the corporation. And that is, they no longer make independent votes. They vote along the corporation lines because they want to continue to get that money. Because the one most important factor in almost every politician's life is to get reelected. Unless they're very close to wanting to retire, their goal is to get reelected, and the only way they get reelected is by having more money than their opponent. It has been studied and studied and studied. The single most important factor in getting elected or being reelected is the amount of money one can accrue in their campaign chest for advertising, 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 and hiring people to go out door to door, hiring people to do all the other work that is necessary to get a winning campaign going. So that's why these politicians react that way. And that's why, obviously, there should be absolutely no corporation that should be giving money to any politician.
How do you feel about the Citizens United decision that the Supreme Court made a few years back that basically said corporations are people or have the...
That didn't surprise me at all. Those five are owned by corporations.
And how has that influenced our society, that decision?
Extremely detrimentally. We now have global warming taking place that has been proved beyond a doubt. The Union of Concerned Scientists, they even proved why all this snow and cold weather is actually a symptom of global warming. And we have politicians to this day. Senator Imhoff of Oklahoma stated that global warming is the biggest hoax ever perpetuated upon mankind. His campaign is very heavily financed by your gas, oil, and those kind of companies. So of course he's going to come out with that. And that's one example of how it so detrimentally affects. The other way is going to war. These corporations want war. Corporations that make military equipment and bombers and everything else. War is such a big moneymaker for these corporations that we go to war because of the corporations influencing these politicians. I could go into a million different examples of how corporations go into this. And you have to realize, corporations, these are multimillionaires in these corporations, these CEOs and executives. They are multimillionaires. Every single need that money can buy, they have satisfied. The reason they continue to get up every day and go to work and exploit people, exploit the environment to get more money is because they are sociopathic. If you read the medical definition of sociopathy, they fit it to a T. In fact, there was a study done, and unfortunately I read it prior to me getting involved in Occupy, so I did not make a notation of who did the study, the interview. But they did an interview of some 100 top CEOs and executives, and what they told them is, we want to find out what are the personality characteristics that make CEOs and top executives so successful. Interpreting the results, they found out that over 90% of them had some form of sociopathic responses to this questionnaire on different levels, different degrees, but they all, 90-some% showed some level of sociopathy. Sociopathy, you have no remorse. You only think of yourself. You always want more. You always seek power. And these are the type of things, these are the type of people that get in power. Passive people, like myself and many other occupiers and many other Americans, we don't care about all this power. So we don't run for office. We don't get in these positions of power. But it's your sociopaths that do. And therefore, they can make these decisions that are against everybody's interest. They have no remorse about that, as long as it fulfills their sociopathic needs.
And these corporations that influence the government, have they turned what used to be a republic into a plutocracy, in your opinion?
Okay, now I want to make sure I've heard several different little varieties of plutocracy. What exact definition are you using? And I'm pretty sure what.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Rule by wealth, basically.
Oh, absolutely. 100% agree. No doubt about it.
Do you feel the Occupy movement succeeded?
The Occupy movement absolutely succeeded in certain ways. Did we change the country completely? No. But we have certainly opened up some eyes of people. We have given people, like me, I was very concerned. I wanted to do something. But where? What do I do? Go down to, if there was no Occupy movement, and I went down to Zuccotti Park with my sign, watch Inside Job, I can just see the New York Daily News plastering their headline, Kooky Cop Protests. But with the Occupy movement, this gave a lot of people a way to partake in this movement. The other thing, now, we're no longer in Zuccotti Park, but a gentleman in New York City, and I'm going to butcher his last name, but his first name is Sumamba Zakubi, I will take a guess at. He termed the Occupy movement brilliantly with saying the Occupy movement has become a Swiss Army knife. We now have Occupy Monsanto. We have Occupy global warming activities. We have Occupy pipelines, tar sands pipelines. We have Occupies now that have gone back in areas of the country, their communities, and not only maintained an Occupy presence, but have recruited others into their group to fight these problems in their communities and across the country. So we definitely have succeeded in heightening the awareness of these problems, and we have succeeded in getting more people involved. Without Occupy, that never would have happened.
When you were in New York, is it true that you were detained by the New York City Police Department?
Is it true I was what by the New York City Police Department?
You were detained by the NYPD. Is that correct?
Only with the day I was arrested.
Okay, you were arrested. I'm sorry.
For committing civil disobedience. It was a perfectly legal arrest.
Okay. And Can you tell us about your experience with that?
Oh boy, I could go. It's funny. It was one day, but I could go on for days about that. I got down on November 14th, and I went down. Then I went to Zuccotti Park, and like I said, I held my sign, even though the encampment was destroyed. And other people then started to come back. The people that were in the encampment came back and started to protest with signs. They just weren't sleeping there at night. And I had an individual come up to me and say, "Captain, would you be willing to help us Thursday, November 17th at Wall Street? We're trying to shut it down for just one day." And I said, "I'm down here to help you in any which way, form, capacity I can." That Thursday I got there, and I had absolutely no intention of getting arrested. I have absolutely no intention of civil disobedience. In fact, it never came into my mind to commit civil disobedience. I was just going to stand there in support of everybody to show them, hey, I support you guys. And I had my sign. That sign, I believe, said, NYPD, don't be Wall Street mercenaries. I'm standing there, and the next thing I see is, I'm standing there for a couple hours, but then I see all these young people being dragged down the street by the police, handcuffed, and here they were being arrested for civil disobedience. I didn't know they started a civil disobedience action further up the street. And when I see one after another, two things came to my mind. Number one, these individuals were willing to take the risk of being beaten. Their personal welfare they were placing in danger because they did not know what would happen to them after being taken out of the view of cameras. And they did this just 2 days after they were victims of the brutalization of the destruction of Zuccotti Park. Yet they still took that risk. The second thing that hit me is they're willing to sacrifice their freedom for who knows how long. Not one of them knew, were you going to be in jail for 1 day? How about a week? How about a month? They didn't know that. But they were willing to make those two sacrifices. That's so overcame me that I made the most spontaneous decision in my life. I am not a spontaneous person. I am a planner. Planning came in very helpful to me in my career. I know it's not an exciting, planner is not an exciting kind of guy. The girls all want the spontaneous type of guy, and I understand they're more fun. But I am a planner, and that's why this was so unusual for me. There was no planning. I didn't even think of what are the repercussions of this if I do it? I put down a sign, I sat down, and I committed civil disobedience, and I was arrested. Well, anyway, I was taken in. There's a little comedy here. I was taken in. There were so many of us, about 100 of us, out in the detaining yard. And while we were out there, there were officers taking about groups of 7 or 8 and getting their personal information, their names, addresses, stuff like date of birth. I had a petite Russian officer who asked me, of Russian heritage, obviously, and she asked me to give me my license and whatnot. And when she was writing it all down, she gasped, and she put her hand up to her mouth. And she said, "Oh, my goodness, this is your birthday." And it was. November 17th was my birthday. It didn't mean a thing to me. When you get my age, birthdays just don't mean anything. But the fellow next to me heard her say that. So he shouted out to everybody, "Mic check. This is Captain Lewis's birthday." And then spontaneously, you had 100 people started to sing happy birthday. And it was the best birthday I ever experienced. It really was riveting to me, and meant a lot.
Do you feel that there were some people in NYPD that's... let me back up just a second. The reason I asked that question was because before you got arrested, the whole press was covering this like it was a group of thugs and a group of hoodlums out here causing trouble and disrupting everything. You had to really seek out alternative media to get the real scoop on what the movement was about and what Occupy was about. But you gave it a lot of credibility by what you did.
Yes, Chris.
By doing that.
That was one of my motives, because the press was showing these people to be screaming, dirty, shiftless people. And I thought, if I go down there in my captain's uniform, just let them try to show me as dirty, lazy, not wanting to work. They won't be able to do it. I knew I could give this Occupy movement a little different face. And two words, so many people came up to me, and they always used these two words. They said, Captain Lewis, we are so, so thankful for you giving us credibility. And the other word they used was for giving us legitimacy. They felt, now this man, he came over from the other side. He's an outstanding member of the establishment, and he's supporting us. He's saying we're right. That meant so much to them. I had one common response to those people that thanked me for giving them credibility and legitimacy. My response was always, are you kidding me? I joined you because you are so legitimate and credible.
And during this experience, did anybody in the NYPD voice an opinion of support for what you were doing?
Only one. sad commentary. But while I was being led through the channel there to get processed after I was arrested, one officer came up and just very quickly whispered in my ear, you have the balls of an elephant. Keep it up. And that's the only positive thing that was ever said to me. I got several very mean things said to me, but the most common reaction was just total ignoring me. Nothing positive or negative, just a total ignorance.
And these corporations that Occupy was trying to bring to light and take away some of the power they have are the same people that are lobbying, ironically, to reduce the benefits and salaries of some of these officers that were arresting the protesters. Is that correct?
That is correct. But they don't know. They're taking away their pensions. I can speak from personal experience. Even 10 years ago when I was on the force, these corporations are influencing cities, and we lost part of our pension. When I started out, we had lifetime health care. Then they went down, while I was still on the force, they went down to 3 years. When I left, they were arguing to eliminate health care. So it's just a gradual destruction of the officer's security that he had previously with the health care, pensions, a decent income, and the officers just totally go along with it. And part of this reason is because of the police unions. Unfortunately, police elections are like any other political election. You have a president, a vice president, and other people that are running for those positions in the union against other people who are represented, boards of people who represent different slates. Now, again, we go back to what is the most important factor to getting elected? Money. These officers who were running for election to be head of in Philadelphia, it was called the Fraternal Order Police. In New York City, it's called the PBA, Police Benevolent Association. In Philadelphia, with the FOP, these cops running for election, some of them without contacts, they actually tried to get money from their own pockets to finance their campaigns. Obviously, these were very weak campaigns. The slates that won were those slates that had funding by corporations in Philadelphia, primarily banks. In fact, the publication of the Fraternal Order Police, which comes out quarterly, you will see advertising there by who? The most expensive advertising, full page, glossy, is advertising by banks. Banks support the running of the slates for the president, the vice president, the whole slate to take over the FOP. Now, once that is established and that slate gets elected, they're beholden to those corporations. Within 4 days after I got arrested, within 3 days, I got a letter from the Philadelphia Police Commissioner threatening me to stop. In fact, he used these egregious words: "If you do not stop, I will take any and all action to stop you," in so many words. The police union I received on the fourth day was from my union. And these were waiting for me. But I came home like a month later to take a few days break, and these letters were waiting for me at my home in upstate New York. The letter from my union, the title was on the outside, FOP, Philadelphia. I'm thinking, oh, my union. I said, just maybe they may be saying, listen, brother, we heard about your situation. You're a member of this union. Let us know what we can do for you. Just a little part of me thought that, hopefully. No, when I opened that up, what did I get hit with? A letter from the union saying that the police pension director had filed a grievance about me, and it wanted to discuss my eligibility, continued eligibility for my pension at a certain date and time. Now, why did the union send me this letter? I'll tell you why. Because the banks in Philadelphia did not like what I was saying. They did not like the Occupy movement that was in Philadelphia. They found that threatening. And they went to the union to help stop me. And what better tool than tell an officer, we may just take away your pension. Pension is a critical part of my being able to be retired. Why did the police commissioner write me a letter so egregiously? Because the banks got to the mayor of Philadelphia. The banks supported the election of Mayor Nutter. Mayor Nutter is responsible. The police commissioner, Charles Ramsey, reports to the mayor. I have no doubt that the mayor informed police commissioner, what can you do about this? Now, one other thing I'm going to put in here. I was approached in Zuccotti Park by an individual. All I remember, it was late. He had a red cap on, and he had sunglasses on. He came up to me and said, Captain Lewis, we have intercepted an email from Homeland Security to the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. In brief, the email said, how can you help us stop this guy? And it was, he came to me about 2 days after I was down there. Isn't it coincidental then also that I get these letters from the FOP and the police commissioner? So also now, not only do you have the banks involved, you have Homeland Security writing and emailing the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. The District Attorney's Office then also goes to the police commissioner, also goes to the union, and say, listen, how can you guys help stop this guy? That's how corrupt this situation is.
I'm not surprised. I'm sad.
And I have not disclosed the source of that individual, of the organization he was with. But anybody really in tune with this Occupy movement, you'll know exactly what that organization is.
Were you able to fix your dilemma with the threatening of your pension and everything else?
I ignored the date of the my grievance hearing, and I never heard anything afterwards. I called their bluff, and they were bluffing. They held no cards. With the police commissioner, I actually went down and protest outside of his administration building with a large sign, and I was handing out papers to people walking by in full uniform. And I had several messages on that board. I don't recall all of them now. I remember one said that without Police Commissioner Ramsey, without civil disobedience, you would never be because he was an African American. Without civil disobedience, you would not be police commissioner anywhere. And here he's telling me that I disgraced the city and all for my commitment to civil disobedience. And so that was one sign. I had two others, and I don't recall them. But as soon as I saw that letter, I headed down to Philadelphia solo. I didn't include the Philadelphia Occupy at all. I didn't want to ask them to get involved in my personal business. But I went there all day. I was just handing out leaflets after leaflets. One reporter, it was called into the Philadelphia Inquirer. Robert Moran, a reporter, came out to interview me. And I showed him the threatening letter I received from the police commissioner. upon reading it and saying, wait a minute, he says what you're doing is illegal. He says you have no right to be doing this. He says you can't be wearing a uniform. He says he's going to take any and all necessary action. And yet you've been out here all day. There's his office, and nothing's happening. What's going on here? I said, you'll have to ask him. Robert Moran walked into the commissioner's office, and he was met by the police commissioner's spokesperson. The police commissioner refused to talk to him. The spokesperson got the information from Robert Moran, went back to the police commissioner, informed him of the Inquirer reporter out there. The police spokesperson came back, and this is his words to Robert Moran. The Philadelphia police commissioner has no problems with Ray Lewis exercising his constitutional rights. You see, I called the bluff of the police commissioner, and he backed down. But he should not have threatened me. Oh, then I sent a certified letter to him and asking, okay, you now say that I have a constitutional right to do this. Yet in your previous letter, you demanded that I stop. You said you're going to take any and all necessary action. And by the way, what does that mean, any and all next? That means any and all. I mean, what's he going to do, have a couple cops drag me into a dark alley and break my ribs? I don't know. But anyway, I said, you have made this egregious threat. You now say I have the constitutional right to do this. I'm respectfully asking that you put in writing that you are retracting your egregious letter that you sent to me. He refused to retract his statement.
It sounds to me like what he was doing was illegal, or should be.
Yes. Chris, you hit upon a very good point. When I was a cop, that was called a terroristic threat. Now, though, the word terroristic has taken a whole new meaning, so it's taken out of scope of what it really meant back then. Back then, the terroristic threat, there was and it still is, I believe, a terroristic threat meant to put one in fear of injury or serious bodily injury. That was a terroristic threat. If your neighbor said, if you don't stop your dog from crapping on my lawn, I'm going to come over with a sledgehammer and I'm going to start whacking you with it. That was terroristic threats. He would not be arrested necessarily for that, but he would be summoned to appear in court to answer for that. The police commissioner, in issuing that was a threat, and that he had no legal right to threaten me. Well, that classified as a terroristic threat. Never took him up on that. I was busy in New York City. It would not have gone anywhere. And but yeah, he himself broke the law. And I did write the Mayor Nutter, and I asked Mayor Nutter, will you please request your police commissioner to retract the words in his threatening letter. I'm not asking for any type of arrest for terroristic threats, just a simple retraction. I'm not even asking for an apology. I'm asking for a public retraction of those threats. Mayor Nutter refused to go along with that.
That's amazing. How do people, what advice would you give people to be able to fight the system?
What advice would I give people to fight the system?
Yes, to change it.
Okay, yes. The one thing I will say right now, we can't use violence. We'd get slaughtered. There is no, I know about the anarchy and whatnot. We get totally wiped out, and then they're in full power, and we no longer exist. So there's no side here trying to fight them on the grassroots level. I say get involved with all of any local action you can. Show up for any local actions you can drive to or get to. Get involved. Support those people that are involved. Be one of those people that other people want to support. Write letters. Stand outside of stores. For instance, our local town paper, I was tired of seeing I live up in the mountains here. It's very full of hunters and rednecks and right-wing, conservative, Christian evangelicals and whatnot. You say, well, why did you ever pick a spot like that? I picked a spot because my wife and I have a beautiful old abandoned farm, which is some 200 acres. We're almost right in the middle of it, and it's just a gorgeous natural setting. But this town paper, I got tired of reading that right wing, always right wing views. I got 12 women. Sad commentary, I couldn't get any men, but I did get 12 women and myself. Unexpectedly, we showed up at the office. It's a small town paper. The actual owner is in the office. And he has his other different rooms with his reporters and his receptionists and whatnot. We showed up there, walked into the receptionist's office and said, "We want to see the owner." She was quite taken aback. But anyway, the owner came out, and he was quite taken aback. But with all of us there, he was very intimidated. He allowed us to go into a private meeting room. He soon became quite irritated by my questionings of him that really backed him up in the corner. He got so infuriated that he said, "Okay, that's enough of this. This is over." I said, "Hold on. I'm obviously your problem. I'll leave. Continue to discuss this with the women." So I went out in the car. I waited for about 45 minutes, and they came out, and they said he was going to make some changes and also present our views, publish our letters. And sure enough, that paper has never been the same. So this is an example of what you can do on a small basis that are very important in changing things.
How do you feel about the press's coverage of the things that you did? Did they treat you well? Did they treat you fairly? I know you did interviews with a lot of media outlets.
Well, I presented myself on television on a number of different shows. Tom Hartman, Rachel Maddow, Keith Olbermann's show, Up with Chris Hayes, and then there were Brass Tacks. There were numerous radio shows. And so I more or less presented myself. And on all these shows, I never felt that they were trying to, pinhole me on something or make me look bad. I had total respect from everybody who did that. The one disappointment I had was with the Philadelphia Inquirer not going further to investigate that threatening letter to me, that a police commissioner could break the law, send up such a threatening letter, and just get away with it. I wanted some investigative reporting done as to what in the world what kind of power is this police commissioner invested with, and asked this of the mayor, but that never came about. But I did get coverage from the Philadelphia Inquirer on a number of different occasions, so they did cover me satisfactorily in that respect. And they also, by the way, the one author, Robert Moran, he did point out in his article that when he asked the police commissioner about me protesting out there, he took a 180-degree turn in his response that Captain Lewis is now practicing his constitutional rights from the letter that said what I was doing was not approved and it was illegal. So he did mention that in his article, which I appreciated.
I'm going to ask you a few questions about current topics and get your opinion on those if it's okay with you.
Chris, you can ask me absolutely anything.
Thank you.
And if I'm upset with it, I'll just respectfully say I'd rather not answer.
Okay. A lot of people that are going to be listening to this interview are probably some of those people with right-wing views. And I deal with them and they deal with me. I guess it's a mutual relationship there. They would argue that corporations should be able to have influence on government because corporations are owned by people and, they're paying taxes and stuff like that. Some of these corporations that they're saying should have this influence, especially the big ones, the banks, the insurance companies, etc., they're not just American corporations anymore. They are, some of these are multinational corporations that have influence on our sovereign government. Do you agree with that statement?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they are. And I also will go a step further in that when you say we should allow corporations to have such a big influence in our government, what you're in essence saying we should allow sociopaths to have such an influence. And I will, if you, like I said, it has been tests have been given. And what other reason? Let me give you a very specific. I was a trash man down in Ocean City, New Jersey, working through the summer, make money for college. It was a blast. It was not like your trash man in New York City. Gosh, you were meeting girls all day. They always invited you to parties. And believe it or not, a trash man in a shore resort is held in high esteem, much higher than the pizza twirler. The only guys who were held in higher esteem were the lifeguards. Ain't going to beat that. But anyway, I worked for the Pure Capitalist. It was a private company that did the trash collection for Ocean City. They hired it out. He has a large 100-acre tract of land next to a Cape May bird sanctuary. 88 years old, multi-millionaire, possibly a billionaire. He's in court now with this bird sanctuary because he wants to put up on this 100-acre plot like about 50 McMansions, totally disrupting the bird sanctuary. The bird sanctuary is trying to say, listen, can you maybe just put up 20? Can you compromise with us? He's in court, or was then, trying to do exactly what he wanted. No, this is what I want to do. Because by putting up 100, I can make a lot more money than I can by putting up just 20 McMansions. 88 years old, multi-millionaire, perhaps billionaire, and he doesn't give a damn about society, doesn't give a damn about wildlife, doesn't give a damn about people who could enjoy this wildlife. He has gold faucets. He probably has a gold toilet seat to sit on. He has 100 rooms. Each one has a private bathroom. He gets a new car every year. Best medicine money can buy. He has every single thing that money can buy as of now, and he has for years and years, and yet he wants more money. There's only one way I can describe a person like that, and that is the epitome of a sociopath. And there's too many of them. And I explained before why we have them. It's because they want power, they don't have any remorse about how they get it, and they're aggressive.
You stated earlier there was a study that showed that a lot of these people involved with these corporations are sociopathic. I believe that I can find that study, and I will, when we do the interview, I will link that in the. When we play this tomorrow night, which will be tonight for the listeners, I will link that into the thread so they can go in and look that up and see for themselves that study is valid.
Chris, I don't think you're going to find that. That was a number of years ago.
I think I have a link to it. I will try to share that.
Okay.
But if I can't, then
yeah,
I can't.
If not, people will just have to take my word if they want to or not, and decide on my credibility.
How do you feel about the current administration, as far as the presidential?
The current administration, I always vote green, but I voted for Obama, and I thought I would never ever see something like that. The first time I voted for him, I never ever thought in my lifetime would I see a black man, let alone a black man with a Muslim name with a specific middle name of Hussein. The day of his inauguration, while I was watching that, I did not just have tears coming down my cheeks. I wept uncontrollably. And I was never so disappointed in my life. Never. George W. Bush never disappointed me. I detested the man, but he never disappointed me because I knew where he was at. I knew what he would do. Nothing he did surprised me. Obama incredibly disappointed me. Not only did he disappoint me, but his wife disappointed me. I thought Michelle was a strong enough woman. I saw strength in her. That if, not like Laura Bush, there was she would have absolutely no influence over George at all. But Michelle, I thought, if Obama even got out of line, not that I thought he would, but if he did, I always felt comfort in that there was a backup with Michelle, that she would say, well, wait a minute, I don't agree with what you're doing there, and pull him back in. And if he insisted on doing something wrong, I saw her as such a strong woman, she would say, well, I don't know what she calls him, I doubt she calls him Obama, but honey, she would say, honey, you continue down that line, and you're going to live in this White House alone. But she has also been a major disappointment.
Do you think that the United States should socialize medicine?
Oh, totally. Absolutely. This is a horrendous medical situation we have. Again, it's a corporation. The pharmaceutical corporations run our medical programs, and they do it for maximizing their profit. And there are many different examples around the world where socialized medicine or government, I don't care how you want to label it, but it's not private pharmaceutical companies running medicine. Absolutely, I'm in favor of that.
I would go a step probably beyond just medicine. I also have always thought that, and I guess I am a capitalist because I believe in private ownership of business, but I do not support at all the moneyed influence on our government.
Okay, I have to. Chris, sure. This is the first time. This is the first time I'm interrupting you all night. But when you say you believe in, you're a capitalist. My view on capitalism is the greatest form of government to allow greed and sociopaths to thrive. That's my view on capitalism. But go ahead, continue.
Okay. I believe you answered my next question. I've always thought that college education should also be socialized.
Oh, absolutely. Education is incredibly important to any society to thrive. And you have corporations wanting to dumb down education. You want to keep the public stupid so that they'll listen to you and they'll believe what you're saying and they'll take your jobs. And that's why you're getting now a tremendous push to get rid of public education and put in these charter schools. They're much more controllable. And also religion plays a big part in this. So they can get charter schools that have a big religious influence, where you're teaching creationism. Talk about dumbing down society. Teaching creationism alongside evolution, as George Bush said, well, yeah, I think they should hear both sides of the argument, both views. Well, guess what? Then how about we teach that the spaghetti monster created the world? How about we teach any view? If it's not sound science, you don't teach it in a biology class. But they are dumbing down society. Corporations are in favor of that. This plays into their ball game.
I agree with you 100%.
People that are not educated are much more easily controlled. You have the facts. You know what's going on. When corporations try to push their nonsense on you, you can push back because you have the information. Without that information, you don't push back.
What kind of books do you enjoy?
Chris, I'm not a real big reader of books at all. I would love to have more time to read books, but I have very little free time to read books. I'm much more a reader of current affairs. I love reading investigative reporting. What's going on now? Glenn Greenwald is one, and there's many others out there. And to me, I am not so much interested in a fire in Missouri that kills a family of 4. Yes, that's a tragedy. But that has absolutely no effect upon my life. I want to know the investigative reporting that discovers that house burned down because the contractor did not put in proper firewalls, and he got away with this because the license and inspection part of city government got a payoff from him that he didn't have to put in firewalls. And what happened to this company for that? What happened to the politicians that allowed that? So I am interested in that kind of investigative reporting. I'm not invested in at all in any type of reporting about fires or auto accidents and all that other stuff that has absolutely no relativity to my life or anybody else's, basically, except the people that were directly involved, in neighbors and community. The one book I would say, Howard Zinn's The People's History of the United States. And I don't know if I said this before, but I was embarrassed at Occupy that I had never even heard of Howard Zinn. I had never even heard of his book. And what does that say about I had 16 years of school. Never heard this man's name? That's the way the corporations wanted it. Corporations decide the curriculum that you're going to have in school, not educators. And so every school is infiltrated by the influence of corporations.
How do you feel about private unions?
Private what?
Unions.
Private unions.
Yes.
I am totally in favor of unions, but you have to be very careful of corporate influence on unions. Like I stated earlier about the police unions. By the way, the other union, I offered to see the top executive in the New York City police union. I wanted to discuss with him what I was doing, and have at least give him the courtesy. Listen, I'm a cop. I was a cop. You're a cop. I want to talk to you about this. So perhaps you can get the message out to your members that what I'm doing here. And I never even got a response from him. So why? Corporate influence. But anyway, so unions have got to be here. How was it without unions?
That was horrible.
You had children working. You had people working 7 days a week. You had no medical care. You had no pension. You had total exploitation of people. So, I mean, if you want to know about unions, or watch, my favorite movie of all time is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck and Henry Fonda. If anybody has ever heard of that but not watched it, you have to watch that. And unions are critically important to continue giving people a decent standard of living.
What do you enjoy to do in your free time?
I have practically zero free time, Chris. I'm actually up till 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, which is totally against the way I used to live before this Occupy. I went to bed early. I got early. I got up early. I went out. I worked on projects around my farm, and this has changed my life. My life now is diametrically opposed to the life I had before Occupy. So I'm writing. I'm reading. I have a Facebook page, Ray Occupy Lewis. I would ask your listeners to go to. Also a fan page, Captain Ray Lewis. And so the little free time I do have, I have to spend time with my health and fitness, which is what I did for years. I've been working out and running since 1974. Very, very actively trying to maintain a good standard of health and fitness, and that basically includes weightlifting, not to the point of a bodybuilder, but strength, and also aerobics. My wife and I live on a private quarter-mile road that leads up to a small town road, and I will run up the road as fast as I can, and that's not very fast, by the way. After the 8th mile section, I slow down significantly, but that's all right. What's important is that last 1/8 of a mile that I'm walking fast, I'm still breathing very heavily, and my heart is still pumping very heavily, and that's what counts. And then I actually walk down backwards to improve my sense of balance and whatnot. So in my free time, I give it to exercise and health.
Captain Lewis, I appreciate very much you coming and sharing your experience with us. It's been a pleasure to interview you, and if it's okay now, we will take questions or comments from the listeners.
Absolutely, Chris. I'm ready to go.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe we're live now, and we're just waiting for calls or questions, and Liberty's relaying some questions from the chat room. And I believe that we've got one question here. Okay, we have a question. Do you believe that what Occupy did had any effect on America, and if so, how? I believe that was somewhat addressed during the interview, but if you could readdress that for the person that texted that in, we would appreciate that.
Yes, I feel that Occupy has definitely had an impact on America, but not in regards to one central major location, such as Zuccotti Park. The founder of Occupy Evolve in New York City, that has been going on for over a year now, and I'm going to butcher his last name, but his first name is Sumamba Suboki, and he came up with a very appropriate term. He called Occupy a Swiss Army knife. And what he means by that is Occupy went back into towns and cities, and they formed smaller Occupies, but yet very effective. For instance, Occupy Monsanto, Occupy legalizing marijuana, Occupy healthcare, Occupy politicians. And so there was a major push to get many different facets of Occupy involved in the government here and in the country. So I consider that very successful.
Okay, I've got another question over these texts over. Did you see any other movements that might be effective in correcting the political climate in the United States?
Yeah, the other movement is that I can see being effective, and I spoke to him at the national gathering in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and that is David Cobb. David Cobb was the candidate for the Green Party for president, and he talked to me about what he's doing. That is a move, and it's called Move to Amend, and they want to reverse Citizens United and take the money, the corporate money, out of politics. So I see that as a very effective organization.
Do you have what's your opinion on corporate money influencing political movements, also known as astroturfing?
Well, that's a whole different thing than politics. We're not making decisions, so definitely we need more money. And unfortunately, this is where I have a little bit of beef. You have a lot of multi-millionaires and billionaires that call themselves progressives. But I don't see them coming out with the money supporting the progressive movement as your Koch brothers and all these other multimillionaires who are coming out and supporting the conservative and radical right. Those movements are much more supported by those people than progressives on the left. And the difference between funding politicians and funding grassroots movements is we don't make decisions. Politicians do. So when you have corporations giving to politicians, that's where you're going to have your decisions made that are solely to the benefit of the corporations.
I just want to remind the listeners that they can call in, that we are live. The phone number is 718-213-4601. And another question has been texted over through the chat. Are there any politicians that you feel people should support to help fix politics? I guess they're asking, do you have any preference with the current body of politicians that are on the horizon that might be able to do better?
On the horizon, well, one that was already there, Elizabeth Warren. Unfortunately, Hillary has this sewed up. I don't see any possible anybody. But she has all the money, and that's going to win this nomination for her, and also win the election, I believe. But I would love to see somebody like Elizabeth Warren. I'm not real comfortable with her support of AIPAC, which I believe she supports. But I love Bernie Sanders up there, and I love Alan Grayson down in Florida, I believe. He's the one that termed the phrase with Sarah Palin. He called her the chill Billy, and I love that. So there are a few, but not enough.
What about Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, well, I definitely see him as somebody who relates to the progressive movement, and I also see him as a man that stands behind his words, which I did not see at all with Obama.
Again, the call-in line is 718-213-4601. I do welcome anybody trying to call in. If you are trying to call in and for some reason it's not coming through, just let me know through a PM or something, and we'll try to get that straightened out. What's your opinion of boycotting corporations that are negatively affecting policy? Is that an effective way to change things?
It would be very effective if we could get mainstream America involved in those boycotts. But unfortunately, a boycott by progressives or liberals or occupiers, I don't think is going to be that effective unless you really zero in on local they can be very successful. But on a national level, there's too many people that are totally unfamiliar with GMOs. I wouldn't even want to guess about the percentage of Americans that you ask them, do you know what GMOs are made by Monsanto? They would not have the slightest idea. So you're not going to have, I don't think, a real great success in boycotting a movement by boycotting Monsanto, but you can definitely not buy their products, definitely not invest in them if you're aware of what they're doing. And spread the word. Nothing is as beneficial as actually word of mouth from friend to friend, relative to relative, and that really accounts for a lot. Don't ever underestimate that.
I actually interviewed a gentleman last interview. I believe we have a caller coming in. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, Chris. It's Camille.
Hi. How are
Oh,
you?
Camille, I don't believe that. My big fan, and you would be the first one. Good for you. Go ahead.
I told you I was poised and ready 12 hours ago.
Yes, you did. I read that.
The woofers and I are all clustered around the phone here.
Okay, go ahead. What, you have a question?
Well, I've got kind of a question. I mean, in talking about all the politicians that are up and coming and those we might or might not trust, for me the issue is that ultimately these strings are controlled by the corporations, by whether you believe it or not, the Illuminati. There is just so much going on, and so to trust politicians anymore is really, the way we have the system now, is foolish, because it's just more of the same. They're just going to get bought.
I totally agree with you, Camille. And just briefly on the Illuminati, I'm not knowledgeable enough about it, but let me just say this, and any conspiracy about 9/11 and all of that stuff. And this is a very sad commentary on this country. But there is nothing, no conspiracy or any information you could tell me that reflects negatively on this country or government that I would not believe is possible. Years ago, there were things that could come up. I said, no, totally impossible. That's not possible. That's an absolute lie.
No,
Nowadays, there's nothing that I could not believe could be true. But anyway, about the politicians, you're right. But the only other option, then you're talking about destroying the whole form of government we have now, and that's a incredible step. We would be slaughtered.
The government we have now, but it's severing the ties.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Continue. We have another caller. I'm going to ask that caller to
I was going to say, okay, I've got an echo in here. My voice changed and it's echoing. I honestly think that much of the crux is doing what Occupy has wound up doing now, and diversifying, and part of that starts with local politics.
It absolutely does, Chris.
Because Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I said because I've seen the corruption in our own town here.
Yeah, I live in a very small town up here in upstate New York, and the reason I got down to Occupy late, Scotty Park, was because I, my wife, and a number of other people worked very hard to change our local board to get two pro-frackers, Republican pro-frackers, off. And
I remember.
To replace them with two anti-frackers, two non-Republicans. And that's why we did a lot of work. I could not come down there earlier, Zuccotti, and it paid off. We replaced those two Republican frackers with the two anti-frackers, and local Republicans said they never saw a campaign run like that in their life. So it has to be done on the local level, and can be done on the local level.
Yeah, no, we wound up forcing things to a referendum.
That's a victory.
And yeah, it is, and we won.
Great for you.
But even within that, there was corruption. I mean, I don't even trust the voting system anymore. You find ballots that have been lost. You find dead people voting. Somebody's pig got registered to vote. I mean, there is so much corruption. There is really no way. The checks and balances is non-existent. You get bullshit reports about what oh yes, no, we did an investigation. It's a crock.
It is. Sigmund Freud, the great psychoanalyst, once said that man is basically evil. Carl Rogers, the humanist psychologist, said that man is basically good. And I think it's somewhere in the middle, but unfortunately it seems to be tending towards Sigmund Freud's evaluation.
I think much of that at this point is predicated by the crap in our food, the chemtrails that they're spraying on us, the GMO, the FDA-approved medication that then you find out 5 years later is, causing all kinds of atrocities that they knew ahead of time, but it gets rushed through, because of corporate pressure. Oh, go figure.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Camille.
So now we're trying to fix the world with broken people.
Yeah, and you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that.
You know,
But
so
pick one department of government that's not, you don't feel is corrupt. Department of Labor, Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, Department of Agriculture, FDA, the Environmental Protection Agency. There's no
I
department or
wouldn't
agency.
pee on them if they were on fire.
Yeah, you got it.
No, I just wouldn't. And it's it's discouraging, but I'd like to see more people start getting, involved in a local level. As you know, I can't get out much because of the woofers, but I do what I can from home. I think everybody has got something that they can contribute. Not everybody is comfortable with public speaking or with approaching corporate people or local news people, but there still needs to be an effort made. And I think that when you have people who are into it, it just takes one or two to sort of get the ball rolling. So I would like to encourage all the listeners, even if you're not comfortable, reach out to people in your area. You'll find somebody who can guide you and can give you something to do where you don't have to be in control, but you can be very effective.
That was very effective in our campaign, our election campaign. People who could not do a whole lot, they could only little, maybe one day a week, leafleting or whatnot, say, hey, come on board. And you get enough of those people on board, and then you have an effective organization. You have to make people realize they don't have to do a whole lot. And also, when they come to a meeting, you're not going to place a whole lot on them, because that'll scare a lot of people
away. Well, you
away.
do as much or as little as you're comfortable with.
You got it.
But people, you've got to get out there and make an effort. Due diligence. And at this point, due diligence is very hard to do when people are citing mainstream news and, the newspapers that are just, spewing out what they've been told to.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage all your listeners. I hope more people call. I hope more people will get involved. And I have a quick one for you, Ray. Like you, I got serenaded at Occupy because I celebrated my 60th birthday there.
Good. How about that? I celebrated my birthday the day I was arrested.
Yeah, well, I managed not to. With my mouth, I don't know how, but
I don't either.
Probably somebody's watching over me. That's all I know. My angels are doing
Now
double.
don't go there. Don't go there, Camille.
I know.
Don't go there.
I know, but still. Anyway, I was really blessed for the experience.
Don't even go there.
No,
blessed
still
is too strong a word for me.
Nah, it was still. It's what you. Blessed is not always religious.
All right, Camille, we won't get into religion now. Follow my post on it. We got to give somebody else a chance here.
Thank you for being the champion that you are, because honestly, not many people have stepped up to the plate the way you have in your position.
Camille, I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. And
you have a great night.
I will see you on Facebook. Take care.
Thanks for the show, Chris.
Thank you for calling in, Camille. You brought up some excellent questions and an excellent point on local politics. I've always thought that the corruption in Washington, D.C. is a mirror of the corruption at the local level, just multiplied by thousands. I have another question that's been texted over. Do you have a message for law enforcement in dealing with protesters in the future?
Well, there's no point at all. I haven't even given that much thought because I have absolutely no input. They will not even want to hear anything that I say. I know that from the effect I had on New York Police Department in Philadelphia, and they want absolutely nothing to do with me. They give me the cold shoulder. They won't even, look at me when I walk by. So they're not interested in any input I could have whatsoever in advice. In fact, they would resent me even advising them to do anything or even giving them any type of information. That would be, who am I, to do that? So there's too much resentment there. That's a wall that's I'm not going to be able to break, and I'm not going to spend my time trying to break it.
Do you believe the Patriot Act was a mistake?
Absolutely, it was a mistake. Right-wing conservatives and corporations funding these right-wing conservatives got exactly what they wanted. And I can't emphasize enough. Everything's going on, including the gay marriage and you name the problems that we had. They just out in California, they banned the Cinco de Mayo celebration. It was being held by a school, and they would not allow children to come in with American flags on their chest that day because they felt it was an insult to the Mexican children who were celebrating the Mexican holiday. And no child would first of all, no child is going to pick a shirt out to buy emblazoned with the American flag. Okay? The hateful parents are doing that. And the hateful parents are complaining that the school will not allow their children to attend that party with an American flag on. But corporate America is behind that division. Because when you're fighting like that, you are not looking at the corporations, the corruption. You know when the easiest time for a pickpocketer to be successful in pickpocketing? When two people are fighting. They will never know they got pickpocketed.
Do you feel that we've gone too far with political correctness?
Well, I would like to hear, I'd have to hear an example of that because I myself am not aware of a form of political correctness that I would cite goes too far. Not that there's not any, but someone would have to cite me a specific example for me to state yes or no. But to my knowledge, the political correctness issues I have seen have not gone too far. They should have been implemented years ago. Political correctness comes down to a level of sensitivity, basically, 9 times out of 10. And I think it's good that we are more sensitive to people's feelings.
Okay, I'm trying to put this one together to phrase it correctly here. Give me just a second to...
Sure, take your time.
How is Occupy able to go out and effectively protest today with all the new First Amendment zones? I guess they're also called free speech zones. And here's the second part of the question here. Do activists now have to get permits or approval from local authorities before practicing their First Amendment rights?
That's an interesting question about getting permits. I attended the National Gathering 2 years ago in Philadelphia, and I was all ready to take part in one of their protests that would leave the park grounds and go through the city with the signs and the chanting and the drums. And I asked one of the leaders, do you have a permit to take the street here? And they said no. And then I said, well, I'm sorry, but I can't partake in this then. And here's the way I feel that if I'm in traffic and I have to get to a doctor's appointment, or I have to get to my job, or I have to go somewhere important, or even if I don't have to go anywhere important, I don't know if I want to sit in line waiting and waiting and waiting for this parade to go by. Now, if you get the permit, then police can set up detours, and they can make sure, and they can have police there to every once in a while open up that line at different times that people can get through, and they are not that inconvenienced. But then the other side of that is government makes it extremely hard for you to get a permit. They'll make it that you can only do it from this time to this time, and you can only have so many people involved, and you cannot make noise, and so that's there's both truths to both sides of that argument. But I felt at that time, at that location, that I did not want to partake in that specific protest.
Okay, I want to remind everybody that our call-in line is 718-213-4601. If anybody would like to call in. I've got a couple more questions to read, if that's all right. What are your views on gun control?
Gun control is obviously very controversial, and it obviously has pros and cons on each side. And I'll be very blunt here. The information on anti-gun control, I looked at the individuals who were, supporting anti-gun control, and then I looked at the individuals and listened to those that were advocating gun control. And just in listening to both sides, I don't even care hardly what they said. It was basically the way they were saying it is I placed my bets. I placed myself on the side of gun control. Now, when I say gun control, What is wrong with making somebody have to register a gun or wait till research is done as to whether or not they have prior records or not? I mean, if you tell me, you want to buy a gun, and I say, well, okay, no problem, but I just want a 3-day waiting period. I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. I see absolutely nothing wrong with having to register a gun. If you have to register a car, come on, let's register guns. And so I'm fearful of just having such freedom to have guns that are not registered. But then again, understand their point is, well, then if they have registration of guns, then the government knows who has these guns and they can go confiscate them if necessary. That's a point. But I think when you balance that with the fact of, I want to know checks were done on people who have guns, I'm going to side on that with them.
And are you following the situation in the Ukraine?
To a certain extent. What question would you have about that?
The question reads, what are your thoughts on the situation in the Ukraine right now?
I think it was great what they accomplished, and I was surprised what they accomplished. If you would have asked me, I would have said that they're going to get squashed. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I believe that there's a strong chance that Russia will come in, and so they still may get squashed. I mean, Putin is already carrying out very aggressive military maneuvers, and you have to ask yourself why. And so it's still really, really dangerous there. We don't know what's going to happen.
Do you think the Cold War is rebooting?
Do I think Putin is what?
Do you think that the Cold War is coming back?
No, I don't see that to that effect. But it doesn't have to go to that effect to be extremely damaging to world affairs. When I say it, I mean Russia's actions.
How do you feel about Pussy Riot?
I'm not fully aware of everything they've done, but from what I'm aware of, I support them 100%, and I would protest them there if they came to America. I wouldn't, even if I was paid to go to Russia or wherever they are, I would not go, because over there, I would not ever trust the governments over there.
Thank you.
To what, sending me away for prison for 10, 15 years.
We got a lot of questions coming in about this Russian thing. I'm sorry. Thoughts about Putin and his homosexual policies? I guess it would be anti-homosexual policies, actually.
Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. There's absolutely no... What? I don't see how you can justify that. What's the justification in that? That's like having an individual come to power and say there will be no heterosexual relations. There is, and keep this in mind, I challenge anyone to give me one sexual act that homosexuals engage in that heterosexuals have not engaged in. And let's get down to the basics here. Aren't lips wherever they are, wherever they're placed? Lips are lips.
Okay, again, the number is 718-213-4601. And there's no questions coming over chat right now. If you feel like you'd like to discuss anything about the interview or any subject at all, until we can get another question, that's fine. But it looks like it's about 25 minutes to 9 my time. I want to thank you for coming on and taking all this time to do this. It's really been wonderful to have you as a guest.
I appreciate that you having me on. It means a lot to me.
Is the space program a waste of taxpayers' money?
I think there's other priorities. I think, well, let's put it this way: the space program is a boondoggle for corporations. They're the ones that are making off on this. And from what I see, we have other priorities. It's got to be. You have to place things in priority. And I would definitely put space exploration at very near the bottom of my priorities at this time in history. I think we have done enough space exploration to realize there's no immediate advantage of any type of benefits by continuing to go up there.
You said you saw Hillary Clinton being a shoo-in for the Democratic nomination. A question from the chat panel just came in and says, who do you see being elected in the upcoming presidential election?
Hillary Clinton. But the one reason I spent a number of days down in Trenton, New Jersey. In fact, one of the days was Governor Christie's re-inauguration of the state address. And the reason I was down there is because I wanted to highlight what he did with the George Washington Bridge. And I stood outside the state building and outside the Armory when he was giving his address, and I had a sign that said "Jail Christie," because I think his actions concerning that bridge shutdown amount of a crime. There's no doubt about it. In fact, it's a terrorism act to interfere with any type of traffic on a bridge without any type of legal basis is a terroristic crime. And the reason I wanted to make sure people were aware of what he was responsible for is because he was the leading nominee for the Republican nomination for president, and I saw him as a quite the foe for Hillary Clinton. He had considerable strength, whereas now without him, the Republicans are going to have to go to one of these right-wing, far-out conservatives that have their base, but they're not going to be able to beat Hillary.
Okay. During the interview, you addressed how you feel about the current administration. I've got a question on Benghazi here. Did the Obama administration drop the ball in Benghazi, or was that just the media?
I have not researched that heavily enough to comment on that. But I know it's quite possibly dropped the ball, and it's quite nothing would surprise me with Obama, and nothing also would surprise me with the right-wing media trying to come out with information that's not only slanted but actual lies to destroy a Democrat.
Okay, got another question on Obama about the Fast and Furious gun thing in Mexico. And again, the call-in line, if people want to ask questions over the air, it's 718-213-4601. Okay, and about Fast and Furious, was that mishandled? I'm getting specific questions about Obama, I'm sorry. Hello, Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, just checking. We're just going to kind of ignore some of these questions that are being texted over and encourage people to call in. Well, we could wrap up the interview. We did have a good turnout for it, and I do appreciate your time.
Whatever you want, Chris. It's up to you. It's your show, and I'll abide by whatever you want to do.
Who is your least favorite politician?
I don't know if we have time to go into that. There's just so many that we'd go. Michelle Bachmann, Sarah Palin, and I don't just a whole bunch of men. Governor Perry, Rubio. There's a list a mile long, and obviously they're all Republicans, but there's some Democrats that I don't care for. And let's go to a big Republican, James Inhofe, the senator of Oklahoma, who I think is extremely damaging to the most important issue of the day, global warming. And he is going to live to regret. No, he may not live to regret his words, but children and grandchildren will. And his words were that global warming is the greatest hoax ever perpetuated upon man, and that is tremendously damaging to any type of research into global warming. He twists and shapes people's minds that it's not occurring, and this is a politician that I abhor, and also all those others that say there's no problem with global warming. They're all whores of energy corporations that were elected with energy corporation money, and they will get reelected with energy corporation money. And they are so sociopathic that they will put the world's health at risk, the continuation of life as we know it, to receive that oil and gas and coal money. And that man is a sociopath. People that do that are sociopaths. And I'm not. I would ask them, and I would challenge them to go to any type of medical expert on sociopathy, take any test, and it will show that they rate high in a level of sociopathy.
Is it true that the U.S. has more vacant homes than it does homeless people?
Could you repeat that?
I'm not sure if you know the answer to this. I certainly don't. Is it true in the United States there's more vacant homes than there are homeless families?
I've read that, and I've read the statistics, and I've done a little research on it with different sources, and what I've come up with, and these are federal figures also, financial institution figures, and government figures on the number of homeless, and from what I've read, yes, the amount of number of vacant homes is more than the homeless people we have.
Do you think the government should do a program to, even if it's temporarily house the homeless in some of the vacant homes that we have?
Absolutely, but how are corporations going to make money out of that? Every decision in this country by every politician, almost, is based on corporate interests. Corporations are going to make no money unless we can figure out how corporations can make money to put homeless in these vacant homes. Then they'll jump on board, and there won't be one vacant house left in this country. Or rather, there won't be one homeless person due to the fact that the vacant homes outnumber the homeless. There will not be one homeless person left in this country if they can find a way to make money off of housing them.
Here's a question. This was addressed somewhat during the interview. I'll expand on it a little bit from what they've typed over here to me. If you watch network television now, networks like the History Channel are showing shows about pawn shops. Networks like the Learning Channel are showing shows about rural life in Kentucky. Is there an intentional dumbing down? I think this was addressed in the interview, but is network television intentionally being a tool to dumb down society?
Is network television owned by corporations? The dumbed down society does not do critical thinking. A dumbed down society is not interested in investigative reporting. So I would say, absolutely, there's a benefit to corporations to dumb down society. When you have a president who is run by corporations, a former president, George W. Bush, who says he believes that, quote, the theory, which it is not, of creationism should be taught alongside evolution and let people decide, that is dumbing down society to the max.
And what would you see as the biggest problem in the public school systems, and how would you recommend that we address that?
Public school systems have been totally stripped of funding. Again, corporations are behind this. They want to promote the charter schools. The charter schools can be run very differently. The curriculum can be manipulated, and what's standing in front of corporations from getting that control are the public schools. Even though they already have a lot of control in the public schools, they want total controls, which it means destroy the public schools and let's go to charter schools.
Here in Virginia, before he went into Washington politics, Eric Cantor actually lobbied for a lot of funneling of public money towards private charter schools. And once our previous governor got in, of course, that happened. Now our previous governor has been indicted on 14 counts of felony charges.
Yes, yeah, that's common in many other places.
Why is Chris Christie so bulletproof?
He was. He's got this down-home way about him that just fools people. And he's not that, he doesn't come out that far to the right. He had a brilliant strategy, and that was to show that he could get Democrats to vote for him. He posed with Obama at the Hurricane Sandy sites, and he won. This is a shocking figure. New Jersey is an overwhelming Democratic state. In the last election, in the last election for governor of New Jersey, where he ran against a woman named Buono, he got 67% of the Democratic vote. He had unions endorsing him. He had Democratic mayors endorsing him. So he's a wheeler and dealer. He's very shrewd. There's no doubt about his shrewdness. And he was able to get these Democrats on board. And subsequently, he would have easily won the Republican nomination. And with so many, appealing to so many Democrats, he would have been a really possibility to become president. But it's not going to happen now. He was so confident in his ability to do anything he wanted, that he was a king and not a governor, that he shut down a bridge. George Washington Bridge is the most used bridge in the world. He shut it down, and they have a lot of information on this to get revenge on the mayor on the other side of that bridge in Fort Lee, so that there would be all this traffic tie-up. And in fact, he had. Hello, you still there?
Hello. Yes, still here.
Okay, okay. He sent, or someone. Let's put it this way. Someone in his organization went to the police and had them go up the cars unsolicited. They would go up the cars that were in these traffic jams, motion the people to lower their windows, and said, if you're frustrated, call the mayor of Fort Lee. Outrageous abuse of power that this Governor Christie used.
Do you see the Occupy movement coming back, I guess, to Wall Street?
On occasion, they'll be there on special events, special times, maybe the celebration of September 17th every year, but you're not going to see a tent city in Zuccotti Park anymore. That will not happen. And it doesn't have to happen, by the way. That service, there's no reason to do a rerun. There'll be no purpose served at all in doing a rerun. That park did, though, serve a purpose that reverberated around this country and in parts of the world even. There are I'd say 15-some countries where are represented by people that contact me on my Facebook and are supporters of me, because they realize not only do they realize what happened with Zuccotti Park and Occupy, they actually even know about my participation. So that's how strong Zuccotti Park was.
Do you feel that the end of net neutrality, if the FCC does not take action to reinforce it, will hurt the ability for movements like this to communicate through social media?
It would destroy it. It's that serious.
I agree.
It is that serious of an issue.
I could do a whole show on that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could discuss it on that, but I believe it's being covered right now. People need to really take action and look at that seriously. Well, I want to thank you for your time. And
all right, Chris, it was my pleasure.
You've been with us for a couple hours or more, and I really do appreciate it. And I look forward to talking to you again sometime.
We certainly will. You take care, Chris, and I say so long to all your listeners, and I thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
So long.